kiwis are kind of a new crop for me. I haven't been working here all that long, and I had never grown kiwis before, so I'm still learning. Those are mushroom
They're what?
blocks. Oh, really? That they got from I don't even know.
Are they just like blocks that have been inoculated?
Yeah.
Wait,
But
what?
then they mold. They let them mold.
Oh, so they're not like okay.
So they're supposed to be mushrooms?
What?
Yeah, they got them from. Yeah, they're.
Oh, those are like the Whole Food kind of like grow your own mushroom boxes.
I don't know where they got them from. Like some, they got them from some mushroom grower.
Whoa.
Yeah, they were inoculated.
That's so
Like
cool.
mulch,
Uh-huh.
like fine mulch.
Yeah,
That is
those
so
look
cool.
so rich.
But you have to like wrap. You have to do a whole process of sterilizing them and wrapping them.
Clearly didn't
Yeah.
happen.
And they didn't do, or this happens. They
For
mold,
sure.
so they just
I've done them in
the kiwis
in
for
logs
some reason.
before, and you just like really like soak the log
Yeah.
in water,
Uh-huh.
drill holes to the size of the plug that you get that's inoculated with mushrooms, and then just like put it in a shady part of your yard, and in the spring or like
And that works.
but you
But you don't
yeah.
have to sterilize it or anything. It just works. in
Not
the wood.
with that.
Yeah.
There's there's certain things that you need to like sterilize when you get them in bags usually like from stores. They sterilize them first. And then if you do them in like mason jars and stuff like that, you have to sterilize like everything.
So could you potentially do like a hugel culture with the mushrooms from a box?
What?
Like hugel culture with like
What's
it's like hugel culture.
Google?
Hugel.
Google, okay.
It's with wood. You bury the wood, like a log, for instance, and the concept is that it breaks down and provides the nutrients to the soil, as well as the mycelium and other
Oh yeah.
beneficial
I've read about that before,
decomposers,
actually.
and then but you cover it.
Okay.
So my thought is you could put
do
one
with
of
that?
those boxes in like one of the log type, and then
Yeah.
inoculate it together.
I bet you could do that. Yeah. It'd be a cool, fun experiment.
I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, you should.
Okay. Let's see. So kiwis.
Yay!
Kiwis are a subtropical vine native to China. But they are so subtropical just means they really like this climate actually, and a little bit warmer, but not too warm. If it's too hot, you won't get a good yield. They need a certain number of chill hours in the wintertime, and I think like at least 400 to 500 chill hours. So that just means number of hours below a certain temperature. And then they need, but they also, it can't be too cold, so they need, it's like 270 frost-free days or frost-free nights maybe. So, so they definitely can take it a little bit colder than this, but not a lot. So this is a nice place for kiwis. And as I mentioned before, they're dioecious, which sounds like you all have some background in this stuff. So like 2 houses, so it means that they have, for every pollen receiving vine that we plant, for every 8 pollen receiving vines that we plant 1 pollen producing variety that pollinates the one, so then we just get fruit off of the pollen receiving vines. Awesome. So we just get fruit off of, so 1 out of every 8 is not going to produce any fruit because it's just here to provide pollen.
Are they insect pollinated? Or like
Yeah. They're primarily insect pollinated. Yeah, they won't really, they don't, and they also, they make their flowers, if you were to look at a kiwi flower, which I highly recommend if you're around in the springtime to walk through here because it's one of the most beautiful things.
When?
Is they have, the flowers are about this big and there's this kind of creamy yellow color. They have both pollen producing and pollen receiving parts, but on the the pollen receiving vines, just the pollen receiving parts work. So it's kind of, if you were to look at the flower, it looks like a perfect flower, but it actually doesn't function as a perfect flower. And they're grown primarily in California and in New Zealand, hence kiwi. They're native to China, but the New Zealanders started growing them in like the mid 1900s, and then we started growing them in California in like the 1940s, 50s. Like, it hasn't been that long that we have had them here. And the way that the seasons work in New Zealand, they're actually harvesting kiwis in early spring, and so the kiwis that we're eating off of the supermarket shelves in the springtime, or for most of the summer, are actually imported from New Zealand. And then that at around this time of year, you'll start to see a shift, and you'll be able to find California kiwis because everyone has just harvested. Oh, and you can see some. So this was really beautiful. A few weeks ago, they were all hanging like that from the vines. So we come in November and we harvest. You can get it. It's all yours. So we grow we grow 2 different varieties here. Hayward. Nice.
Yeah, dude.
So we grew 2 different varieties here. Hayward is this one, which looks a lot like probably what you're used to seeing, and this is kind of the supermarket variety, but it's also really delicious. So the Hayward, and this is the Bruno. They're generally pretty easy for us to keep straight during harvest because the Bruno has a longer. It's
Bruno's
longer.
so adorable.
I would say. I would almost say sweeter, but it has kind of a thicker core to it, which I think is why it's not as commercial. One of the reasons it's not as grown commercially. It's just a smaller fruit. So the Haywards you just kind of get more bang for your buck. So we typically will get much higher yields on our Haywards. So we grow 2 varieties. We harvest them in November. The way that we decide, hi,
Hello.
how's it going? What to harvest is we test the sugars. So we don't want these